All right, everybody out there in YouTube land. Once again, it is I, Matt Yancik, coming at you with another episode of GMs in the Machine. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. It's really good to see you out there. And as you know, with each episode of GMs in the Machine, I like to bring you another game master and take a look at the techniques and the approaches that they use towards building their games. So each episode, I need to sort of warn you in advance. Each episode is usually a little bit different, or sometimes a lot different, because the truth is, whenever I plan one of these episodes out, I want to put as much of the burden of the episode on me because I want the GM to come on and have a lot of fun and be able to sort of, riff on whatever they want. So I do a lot of prep to make sure that they can kind of do that. But then on the other hand, because it's a little bit less predictable, I can't always anticipate exactly what is going to happen. You never know. It's electric over here. It's electric on this show. So sometimes like it's a little weird, like transitioning from one thing to the next. But at any rate, I want to assure all of you out there tonight that I have a very special episode planned tonight. We have a trained, streaming, actual play, legit in the business guest on the program tonight. So we had Chelsea on the program, on Role Player with 1,000 Faces a few months ago, where we talked to her a little bit about her background and maybe her thoughts on the role playing scene and her thoughts on running actual plays. And one of the reasons and one of the ways that Chelsea first caught known as Little Red Dot in the business, one of the ways that she caught my attention initially was her really polished and professional actual plays. I think probably the more famous one, or at least the one that caught my attention, was the one that she did with the Alien RPG. And I was super impressed by how well it was run. And it wasn't run just, you know, just from the perspective, like run well because, like from the perspective of the tabletop. It was also run really well from the perspective of someone producing a show. So tonight we're going to sit down with Lil Red Dot, Chelsea Steverson, and we're going to talk to her a little bit about how she goes about building a game. We'll probably also talk a little bit about how she builds an actual play as well, because I think we've got a rather unique perspective into running games online, and I'm going to let her decide whether or not she's going to build this for streaming or build this just for like a private game with friends. We'll see where it goes from there. But as usual, I'm getting a text from my mother who says that I'm talking too much, and she's like, Matthew, I don't tune into the program to talk and hear from you. I really want to hear from your guests. So let me make haste and switch us over to Chelsea. Chelsea, thank you for sitting through my soliloquy. I do so apologize for that. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad to be back.
I'm glad that you're back. This is you have now officially become a friend of the channel because I have so few people that actually come back the second time, not because they hate the experience, but just because like it's just the way scheduling works and stuff like
Time,
that. So
time is a hard thing. Yeah.
anyone that's been on the channel twice is officially a friend of the channel. I'll be sending you an official T-shirt with
Oh,
friend of the
nice.
channel. I also have a bumper sticker which you can
I was
put
about to say,
on
do I
your
get a
car
mug?
with a mug, and you'll
Mug.
get a hat. And if you could just get your photograph taken with like a famous person or something to prove that you're
Yeah,
wearing
sure, 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 sure. I'll get
yeah,
right on that
I
for you.
appreciate it. Well, it's good to have you on the program. Again, thank you very much for coming on. Um, so Chelsea, tonight you are going to work your magic. You're going to take us through the way that you build a game.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about whether or not, well, maybe what you're thinking in your head? Is this going to be a one shot? Is this going to be part of a serial adventure? Is this for a particular game? Can
So
you?
this was hard, right? So first off, I want to give a shout out. Thank you, Doomed Colonist, for your love of my Alien RPG. And yours as well. Thank you for your shout out as well. That is a very particular campaign,
Mm,
because it's a bit of my love letter to Ridley Scott. That comes from a
oh,
very
Ridley.
deep personal GM place,
Mm-hmm.
which, not every campaign is going to. Sometimes you're going to run it because your friends want it, not necessarily that you want it, or sometimes you're going to run it because, well, this is the theme that the channel wants. It's paying you to like GM this actual play, or to hit this specific new book or new product, right? Um, that's a whole different thing. So, I actually debated today writing and working on the 6 arc epilogue that is coming, because we have officially finished the Alien show. Technically, the 3 seasons are done, but there is going to be an epilogue coming that's kind of a time jump that's going to wrap everything, and it's going to be a really tight 6 episodes. And I say that because the first season was only meant to be 6 episodes, so I kind of wanted to mirror the top and the bottom. But that being said, I think I'm going to save that because I don't want to ruin anything.
Not a problem.
I don't want to spoil anything for that, because it is coming this summer, everybody. So I said, well, what can we work on? Because there are a lot of different kinds of games that as a GM you can plan for. There are one-shots and campaigns, there are short campaigns, there are long campaigns, there are pre-written things, new things like what we're going to do today. And then if you just think about what we call the medium itself, is this with your friends at home? Is this streamed to a professional channel? Is it a charity event? Because I plan charity events way different than I plan even a regular one shot,
Mm,
right? Am I trying to show off a product? Am I trying to hit something specific? Is this about combat? Is this a play test? Like, all of these things
mm.
shape how you design the adventure that you're going to run them through. So this is big because there's only so much time in our interview.
I know
For us,
we only have 7 hours tonight, Chelsea. Okay,
yeah, we
seven.
only
Let's
have
keep
we
it to
only
7 hours. I might be able to do 8.
so we have we have a limited time, but I think it's important to note one of my very first rules about GMing, which is that I never plan so however long I'm supposed to be running for, if it's a 4-hour one shot, or my friends and I are getting together for 5 hours, 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon, whatever the time slot is, you only have enough. I only prep for half of that time. So if it is a 2-hour game, I only put an hour's worth of prep into it. If it is a 5-hour game, I put 2.5 hours worth of prep into it. That gives me a good, manageable way to not overwork myself and
Yeah,
not to put too much in, because that is oftentimes the trap of a GM, is if we plan too much or too little.
right.
And so that rule tends to be my personal one of like, how much time do I put into it? Um, so that's a good place to start. So for tonight, we're gonna, we would be designing a short one shot.
Right. And I actually
Yeah.
agree with your philosophy there. Like I so when I work with teachers, I often sort of tell them, if you're putting in more time than the length of the class, it's
Yep.
not a bad thing, but it means you might be approaching it from the wrong angle.
Yeah.
And you may be burdening yourself unnecessarily. Now, granted, like let's say, and I'll ask you if this is sometimes the case, it, is there like a lot of ramp up time where maybe if you're going to run a 5 or 6 arc story, maybe you do like a lot of hours in the beginning, but then as the game goes on, I assume
You
maybe
do
there's a
less and
curve
less.
where you're doing less
That's
and less.
usually it. Like, I think, what's the longest campaign I've run recently? Probably the Coriolis game, because I think I ran like 60 or 80 sessions of that. Um, over a period of like 4 or 5 seasons, as we kind of broke it up or whatever. Um, I think it's important anytime you're designing on a big scale. Another, like, I guess, rule that I have, or so, I hate to use the term rule. It's really like it's a checks and balance
It's a
systems for
guideline
myself. It's
as
a guideline. It's a checks and balance system. And one of those checks and balances that I have is to also say, okay, world building and sandbox building, which is kind of the popular thing for GMs right now, sandbox build,
mhm.
can be very overwhelming, because that hints at the idea that you have to have the world ready to go. If we think about a video game, let's think about, I'm going to use Skyrim again, because we
Mhm.
were talking about Skyrim earlier. We'll use Skyrim. When Skyrim loads in, when you walk in a building, it does not have the rest of the world loaded for you. It only has that tavern, those NPCs, that quest line. Then when I walk out of the door, then it loads just enough of the world around me
Right.
for me to see,
Step by step.
step by step. Right? I go into a cave, the cave is the only thing prepped at the moment, right? That's what the running system's running. So if we think a little bit about world building like that, which is like, yes, technically Skyrim is one giant game and it's already planned out. We're just figuring out the path to get through it. But if we take it apart piece by piece, that's
Yeah.
actually what you're doing.
Right.
So if I'm going into a long-term game like Coriolis, now it has its own setting, so I'm going to do the research of just read what the book has, decide inside of the book what I like, what I don't like. And when I figure out what I like, then I start doing the real hard work, which is what about it do I like? What are the themes that keep popping out to me? What are the things I want to put into this game as a GM? What kind of flavored icing do I put on top of a world that is already built? But if we're talking from ground up world building, like you're going to make something unique, the fact of the matter is you don't have to make it all at once. And more importantly, you don't have to recreate the wheel. There are books out there, tables out there, resources out there that help you from the ground up to say, gosh, what if I miss something in a city or I do a thing
Mm.
here or do a thing there? There are
Mm.
so many resources. And I say all of this because what I have chosen to build for us today um, is coming from a place of recognizing that there are a lot of other resources that I will use
Mhm.
in the long run to plan this, right? It doesn't all have to be in the thing that I designed.
Right.
Sometimes I'm just going to use why recreate that wheel? Because if you spend all of your energy trying to recreate something that's already out there, you've missed time
Yeah.
on the real creative piece, on the thing that actually should be unique to you, on the thing that is where your focus is, where your theme is, what your players want, right? So there you have it.
I think
There's a little bit
that's
of a start spiel.
No, I think that's a great philosophy. And what I like too is you mentioned not reinventing the wheel. And something that I do, and of course everybody has their own way of doing it, is I will just steal something. Like let's say I'm not quite sure about the perimeter. Like as you say, like if you walk into a cave in Skyrim, it loads the cave.
The
And
cave.
if when my players go into a certain area and I'm doing something in a new world that I've just sort of setting that I'm just sort of thinking of, I don't know what's around the perimeter, and I really don't know a lot of the. Maybe I know in very broad strokes what's outside. And so what I often do is like pull in generic stuff that I steal from other things that I leave generic enough
Yep.
and vague enough that like when I if it occurs that like
Yeah.
maybe next week or in 3 weeks or in a year we go back to that, I will have been sort of baking that idea in my head and I
Yeah.
would have customized it and maybe even turned it upside down, but I sort of create it in such a vague way
Yeah.
that
I
the
mean,
players don't
nothing's
notice.
original, right, anymore. And I think again, it's still that idea of like when you go in the cave, does it in Skyrim, does it really matter what mountain it's in?
Right.
Does it really matter at that point in time? Now, it could maybe later in the story, or I have to come back to this mountain and its name may become important. But if I'm in the first phases of my journey, the name of the mountain the cave in is not as important as what's in that cave.
Mm,
So why spend time trying to worry about naming the mountain and the mountain range and how did it get made? No, now there's this
right.
myth with this god and he fell, and when he fell, he made the mountains, and now there's this cave, and it's like, well, but I'm going in the cave. None of that actually feeds active choices for my players. And that
Mm,
is where story is actually built. My players can't take action on the name of this mountain is.
right.
My players can take action on there's an unopened chest. Right. And so if you start building your world only around the things that your players can't take action on, then you're going to feel that at the table as the GM, and your players are going to feel it because they're going to go, well, you're going to hit that horrible point in the game where they're like, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And we never want to be there. We always want them driving the story forward and them making choices because everything they're coming in contact with is giving them choices to make in a variety of ways. They can't make a choice on the name of a mountain, right?
And I think that the immediate things that you're giving them within that cave or that setting are the ones that they're going to make their choices off of. And also, I would say, I would guess that the game master is sort of making choices as well in the background about
Yeah.
the links between the objects that they find in the cave or the NPCs or the events that take place there and how they link to the outside world.
outside world, right? Exactly. Um,
So
so yeah,
let
what's
me
next? What do we do next?
Well, I was going to ask you then in this particular case. So you've decided on a one shot. Now, you told me before the show this is for like a little setting you've been kind of developing and working on.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so can you tell me a little bit about the setting and what we're looking at?
I can. Okay, so this is a setting originally that I designed. So again, time, place, the who, what, when, where
Hmm?
really dictates how something is designed. And since it's original design, I will say I've altered things and I've augmented to better fit a more generalized. But so, um, long ago in my early days of Twitch streaming, when actual plays were not quite as popular, I was doing an every Thursday community show where each Thursday it was a brand new table of people from all over the world who just showed up to play together.
Hmm.
And I was the the sticking point as the same GM every week. And so what was needed for something like that is really a West Marches style setting. And I'm not actually very fond of West Marches. I
Mm.
really like the idea of a setting that really can be affected. So one week choices might be made, and that same setting is going to be played by a totally different group of people, but it's going to affect them what happened the week before. And that's how the kind of through line for this community game was. So I needed a setting, and at the time, we had third party publishers, but we didn't have near as many. And one of the things that I am always drawn to is satire and a look at places, stories, locations, viewpoints that don't get that don't get told, right? That don't get a
Right.
space to have story told. So one winter, in the midst of the holiday commercialized rush, I put this little idea together, which is a setting called the Galleria of Grunrundi, or at Grunrundi. And Grunrundi is actually a mountain. It's funny we were talking about mountains. Now the mountain does matter to the story.
Oh
And
my gosh, you just
I know,
contradicted yourself. The show is
right there.
over.
This
That's
time
it,
it does
ladies and
matter.
gentlemen. She's a fraud.
So what I did was I designed a mountain that could be put in any setting. So the idea is you could like pluck this mountain and be like fantasy, right?
Right.
So it doesn't have to be specific to any particular game system or setting. It's a fantasy mountain, but it is a galleria, which is basically a term for a shopping megalopolis, like a massive shopping complex, is what a galleria is, and that is the setting. The mountain of Grunrundi in ancient times served as a dwarven catacomb, now has been cleared out, and the internal kind of diggings of this catacomb have been repurposed into this massive shopping complex. Now, unbeknownst to your players, when you enter, exiting is a lot harder
Mm-hmm.
because there is a sickness in the air of greed and consumerism, and these things draw people to stay. And so it's kind of like a trap. Um, and the setting is that in actuality, at the bowels of this old catacomb, and the reason the dwarves built it here is because they made the offerings of their dead to a dragon to keep it asleep. But now the dwarves are gone, and so are all the bodies. And so the dragon is slowly waking. And cough, cough, unbeknownst, a group of people, without giving too much away, are trying to keep the dragon asleep. And so they need the gold of this place. They need the consumerism. They need to feed the greed to keep the
Oh.
dragon asleep. So the kind of fun thing here is as your players figure it out, they're going to want to free all these people. But at the same time, they're also going to wake the dragon.
Hmm. And so if
So yeah,
so this
yeah,
is
go
the
ahead.
basic like kind of like backdrop to
This
what's
is the
going
mountain.
on.
Yeah,
So what's interesting to me is that it's still like you said, you don't necessarily have to know what's going on with the mountain. And it's actually sort of true. We still don't know exactly what's going on with the mountain. We just know the backstory for like the
right.
situation that the characters are in. So how all of these things exactly came about, we really don't necessarily know, but the players
And the
now
thing is
have.
you don't, do you really need to? All
Right.
you need to know is it
The
was a dwarven catacomb and it's in a mountain. This means now it could be in, right? Do you need a this is also a great, and I actually put this in one of the writing pieces. So I've got a bunch of documents that are in the works. And one of them is that at the top it's like, how can you use this setting? Right?
mm,
General fantasy, a mountain range, a dwarven tie-in, an ancient dwarven like storyline, right? Because this was an old dwarven catacomb that has been defiled into a mall. Okay. So there's that aspect to it. But there is also just the aspect of it could be a turning point piece in releasing a dragon into a larger campaign. Very simple like
Right.
setup,
Right. Okay,
right?
so
And
I'm starting
it's
to.
actually the inciting incident. It could be the inciting incident.
Well, I was going to say I'm starting to sort of see the potential of that and the idea that this could, I mean, it could be a one shot. I can see it ending in fire. I could see it ending
Right?
really well, or maybe with a big.
And the great realization that there's a dragon sleeping in all of this molten gold.
Right.
So there are a couple aspects of the setting. Again, I like cheeky. I like satire, and obviously this is definitely a bit of a statement on commercialism. Um, Inside of the Galleria, people who have given their life to the Galleria become part of the customer service, right? They become part of customer service. And to become part of customer service, if you're customer service, you wear this white mask that you have put on your face and dipped your whole head in molten gold to mold it to
That's
yourself.
creepy.
So they walk around with these masks that are always smiling, like customer service smile,
Hmm.
but they're dipped in molten gold that has basically melted it to their body. It's an offering to the Galleria, to the dragon, to the mall, the shopping complex. And they walk around and help you. So the mystery of like, who are these people? Why are they this way? Is part of the mystery of the sickness that is going on that will slowly take you over. And so they offered their life in lieu of dying, right? You give your all to the, which is basically, oh, I named this sickness at one point. The rest, rapacity fever, rapacity fever.
I like it.
Um,
And you know what I can so the interesting thing about all of this to me is that I feel like there's a lot of different stories, a lot
yes,
of different stories that can be told. And it feels like what's interesting to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the sort of feeling I'm getting as a game master, and this is maybe what I would do with this setting. I would
yeah,
probably be thinking, okay, I can run many different scenarios here, and with each scenario that I run, I'm actually going to be discovering like a slightly different thing about this
yeah,
place myself, maybe because I'll be stealing from what the players say, or I'll be riffing off of what they say, or maybe I'll just have a bolt of inspiration out of nowhere.
right,
And I like the idea of because what's interesting is you don't even necessarily in the one shot have to have the dragon awaken. There could just be the threat
right,
of it, or there could be like the possibility, or there could just be this
right.
sleeping dragon, or somebody like a dragon locked
Because
behind a
there
glass or
are
something.
10 shopping districts, and each district is a city, is kind of how I designed it, right? So if you think about this mountain as a region,
Hmm.
inside of that are going to be cities. And there are 10 internal cities where people live and function, but each district is a certain focus, right? Um, and so in the book, what I'm trying to do is design a story thread one shot per district,
Right.
which is what we're going to do tonight is pick a
That's
district
that's
and
what I
design a
was
one shot
wondering.
around one of our districts. Yep.
So I'm
So we
I'm
can, yeah.
I was just gonna say, just so that you know, because I don't know if you're I don't know if you're watching the stream, but I'm sharing with the folks at home these
Oh,
super cool PDFs that actually
oh,
Chelsea
cool.
made
Okay.
herself. So as she's been narrating through, this is what she's been sort of talking about. So and you can correct me if I'm wrong
So
here,
here,
but
yeah, here are our 10 districts.
these
Yeah.
are the districts. So fashion, antiques, makers, entertainment, livestock and monsters, food court, of course,
Yeah. What
magic,
mall doesn't have a food court?
alchemy and potions, valuables, and the black market here.
And the
So,
black market. And I might have actually, that one might, I've also done, again, I've play tested this a few times. So I did it in this like 10 or 12 week rotation, West Marches style thing where some real shenanigans went down. And then I recently dusted it off after about 4 years and used it again to
cool.
run a one shot on D3 at sea. Which ran very differently because I had the same group of people for like 4 sessions. And so it was interesting to see what they did with like long term threads. And it was interesting too because they visited districts that the first round of group like never were interested in or didn't touch.
It's really something that, and you bring up something that I never thought about, and I feel like a buffoon for having never thought this, but I didn't really realize how how valuable it was to run the same game for different people. Like, I know this is like a big duh moment, and I know that everybody else probably knew this. And I knew this about like having running classes for students, and I knew this about like doing presentations. I knew it about all that stuff. I never gave it a moment's thought until I started running games at conventions, and I realized, oh man, I don't want to come up with like five different game D&D games or Cypher games or whatever. I just want to take this one game and I'll just run it every night for 5 nights. And I was like, holy cannoli! I learned so much, not just about game mastering, but I also learned about like my setting and what I wanted to do with it. And I learned a lot about players and running too. So I love this idea of you having this. And it's funny that you say, oh, I had this like 4 years ago, and then you pulled it out like recently. And I think that's super cool that you can get so much use out of something that is old, and yet you can,
Right.
bring it out and dust it off and it's just
And
fine.
dust it off a little bit. So I do technically have a couple one shots that I have sifted through and run in a few of these before that are rough drafts right now in like
Okay.
paragraph form and some
Mm-hmm.
monsters and things like that. So for example, when I talk about my satire, my cheekiness, in the food court, one of the biggest problems they have are mall rats
Right.
because why wouldn't they?
Yes.
Right, which is just a reskinning of a swarm of rats.
I was going to say, are
Is
they
all it is.
literal mall rats or are they
Yeah, yeah.
figurative mall? Are we talking about
Well, and
Kevin
this
Smith
this
mall
is
rats or?
and this is the fun piece. So one of the things that I'm actually waiting on right now is the next book from Kobold Press, which is called Campaign Builder Cities and Towns. It is a reference book for building better cities and towns. And there's even a character sheet for towns. So
Hmm.
as you build your towns, you have a character sheet for them. So eventually I'm going to fill each of these districts into a town character sheet. And one of the cool things that I really liked about the book is this section. They have two things. They have a section on taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is a commercialized setting, but I don't have to remake rules for taxes and how
Yeah.
things are. There's a book for that. I'm just going to go use the
Right.
Kobold Press taxes, right? Um, and I have they have a section on building guilds.
Hmm.
It's like random roll tables naming guilds, and what I want is for there to be a guild per district. There needs to be like a ruling entity
Right. That makes sense.
per
Yeah.
district. So this is something I haven't done, which is like write a guild per one. And of course, the guild probably is holding secrets or being paid off to keep the bigger piece of all of this quiet, so forth and so on and so on and so on. So these are some of the tie-in threads, but that's kind of the larger setting. I was gonna see, did I cover it all? I had a write-up,
Are you?
though the art is not official.
Problem.
Yeah, and there's like a bunch of cheeky stuff like where do you buy a bulk of many things? Or like where do wizards get their bugbear for
Right.
the entrance of their dungeon, right?
Yeah.
They come to the Galleria to purchase bugbears in bulk or the potions that they need or the items they have to have for the trap. So there's also this cheekiness of like, you're meeting the bad guys, the antagonists, walking the streets who are going to buy the stuff that who knows, you might come across their dungeon and have to
Right.
face. Like that's the kind of joke about it is everybody uses the Galleria. And I did also put a link in there or like a link, a paragraph in there that says, if you don't want to follow the rules of like you can't get in and out, it can also just become a regular shopping location filled with shenanigans in between your campaign. Because how many times do you end up with a shopping episode? And it's the same, like we go to the general store in
Right.
this town.
Right.
A location like this has many adventures per district and is still a shopping location. So it's it can also be used as a location in between your adventures,
Mm.
your break time, if that makes sense.
No, I
Um,
totally get it. Your downtime, right?
your downtime. Yeah, it's a
What was it
downtime
sure to
as
say?
well. So I try to design something that's like, well, do I want to use it as a long-term campaign, as a quick setting for one shots, as something that is really about shopping and downtime activity for my players? I wanted to design something that had a multifaceted viewpoint. So that when we sit down to say do something like we're doing today, we have enough information about the mountain so that now the cave can be as detailed as it needs to be. And I don't need the rest of the mountain information.
Right.
I can hand this one shot that's like, this is what the Gallery of Grunrundi is. Here are the 10 districts. This is where you're headed. And usually I tell my players, choose why you're headed here. Are you returning an item? Is there a sale? Like, why are you coming to the Galleria? Are you meeting somebody? Is there like a lost item in the antiques district you've heard about? Like, and that is how you get your players involved.
So what are you feeling tonight then? What are you thinking? Unless somebody
So,
shouts something
okay.
out in the
All right.
chat,
So,
like what are
chat,
you thinking about?
there are a couple of you in chat. So, I'm going to give you a chance. If there is a specific district you're just burning desire for, you better shout it out now. Because if not, I have two in interests, I guess you could say.
Oh, okay. So
I have some
what are
interests.
you thinking are your interests then? I'm curious to
So
know.
I do have the antiques district is very interesting because it's full of magical stuff, but what most people would consider junk. But if you spend enough time digging through the antiques district, just like any antique store, you might find something really valuable. So there's the antiques district, which is kind of fun. I have a thought for a one shot around the fashion district that's actually a festival, which is a
Oh,
fashion show, which could be kind of fun. I love designing festivals. It's one of my favorite go to one shot platforms, like foundations.
I think that's, I mean, what I like, and actually the first thing that you said there, or what you said there a minute or two ago about making the shopping aspects of it actually interesting. Like, how many times have you walked into a festival or you've walked into like whatever, and it's the same old generic kind of stuff? So I really like the idea. What's interesting is that I sort of feel like if you're going to be designing the festival, or, I mean, for that matter, the antiques section, I mean, you're going to probably say something about the history of the area with the antiques or something about
Yep,
like what's
there's going to be
currently
something
going
hidden
on
that was maybe original to
with
the
the fashion.
catacombs. Yeah. Now,
Well,
the fashion is very interesting because that is where high society is, right? So if you want the
mm,
upper crust of the people, the wealthy people, those secrets that live here, well, you might want to go to, say, the jewelry district or the fashion district, right? The where the money is. But if you want the history of something, if you want to get dirty, if you want to dig down deep as to what's really in this place, you're going to go hit the antiques district. So those are two that I don't necessarily have anything totally written. I'm sorry, totally written for. Um,
that
but
sounds like
we could
a
build off of.
fantastic way to jump into this. It looks like
Great.
Doomed Colonist said his mind has gone, and I think you've seen this, has mind has gone, or her, I'm sorry about that, or their, mind has gone immediately blank. Doomed Colonist, 100%, I
You're welcome. Welcome
identify
to
with you.
Monday.
Welcome
Yeah, yeah.
to my 24 hours a day for the last, well, since I was born.
Well,
Um,
since yeah, forever. Okay.
what are
All
you
right.
thinking
So
then, Chelsea?
I don't know. Okay, so we're between the fashion district and okay, so I'll tell you what I do have ready to go for
Mhm.
fashion antiques. Antiques, the NPC. So when I design a one shot in 2 to 4 hours, the likelihood of your players getting more than 3 encounters done is low. So I never design a one shot with more than 3 encounters. Each encounter is unique: a social encounter, an intelligence based encounter, so a thought based, a brain encounter, and a combat encounter. That is what you can plan in a one shot. So, if it is a social encounter, you have to have an NPC. If it's a combat encounter, I got to have a monster. And if it's an intelligence or like puzzle, I need to have an item, a spell. What is the puzzle,
Mm,
if you would? So, that's a pretty standard
mm,
dot formula for a solid one shot. Um, and when you design, I find that when I design that way, it doesn't become linear
mm.
because who knows? They could end up killing the monster to get them to the social encounter. As long as it creates a triangle, right? It doesn't matter which point they hit. This is actually the design of a one shot, right?
Okay, you
It,
know what? I'm so glad you physically did that with your fingers and showed me that because I'll tell you something. I'm so used to thinking as an English teacher in terms of, the hero's journey, right? So you've got
yes.
certain, you could say, or thinking in acts, 3 acts. What's interesting to me about a one shot or about any role playing situation is just simply the fact that it's an interaction between two people.
Yeah.
And so you've got these events, but they don't necessarily always happen in the same order. So you imagine them as a triangle,
Yeah. It's a
and they
triangle.
may, go different ways depending on
It's still a
the
triangle if I go this
players.
way, or yeah, or this way, right? Like it depends on the player's choices. So what you have to do is set up why they are together. They are going to create most of the time their own inciting incident, or you're going to have that NPC that launches in, or that you can get the hook. But why are your players together is actually the most important piece of the start of a game. And I'll tell you why. Think about any movie you watch, any great movie. Think about the movies we love. The Goonies, for example. We'll use the Goonies. Bare minimum, great character-based story filled with a team. The setup of how those Goonies like come together is important. The same thing with the Breakfast Club. The setup before they hit the inciting incident is actually what's so important and why we love those characters. So to really get both your players and the characters invested, they have to have a good setup. So why are they coming together? If you as a GM can't figure out a way to weave their stories together, well then what does your adventure matter? Because they're not going to go on it together, you know? So you have to think about it. Is it simply like, oh, we're just a bunch of bounty hunters and we're going to kill the monster? That is a fine setup and a good reason for them all to be together. You need 5 bounty hunters because this is that big of a job. Or is it something as simple as the 5 of them were standing in line together when they entered the Galleria? Right? They all had to stand in this exorbitant line to get in the door. So the first scene or the first act of your one shot is actually them standing in line. And slowly.
Now, let me ask you this. Did that just pop into your head? Was that something you were thinking about? Was that something you talked
It is
yourself?
something I have. It is something I have used before for the Galleria,
Okay,
right?
as like a
And
launch.
even like and if I was gonna do something else, so let's say, oh, I got it. Okay, we're gonna do the fashion district, and I'm gonna
Okay.
tell you why. We're gonna do the fashion district because it fits this example. So we're gonna go with the fashion district and the festival, the fashion show, if you would, because that's a good one. So let's say I need a reason my characters have all come together. So they could either choose, why are you in the fashion district for the fashion show? Are you here to steal something? Like, let them pick and choose. What they don't know is that there is a lottery. And at the top of the very first thing to kick off the fashion show, this big fashion festival in this district, is the drawing of 5 random names. Guess what? I'm the GM. I have control of what names come out of that hat. Guess which 5 characters it is. And those 5 characters are tasked with the most important aspect of the festival, which is the final fashion piece, which they have to make, each from a found object of their choosing. Now they have a reason to go explore the rest of the Galleria without getting too deep in like another storyline, but they have a short time to do it. And this fashion display piece is like the peak of the whatever. And it happens every year. This is how we celebrate the creation of fashion and what we wear and how we feel and what makes us look good and beautiful and blah, 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 blah. But the idea is that they have to make the piece of. So let's say that the rogue is there to steal some piece of like expensive leather corset made by this ancient dwarf clan that's supposed to be on display at this fashion show, and their name gets pulled. Because everybody puts their name in when they come in the door, right? So that's the funny thing is the rogue is like, oh, I'm in the fashion district because I am here to steal something. And then their name gets pulled, right? Or maybe there is I don't know, an artificer that wants to make some new piece of clothing and they're here to sell their clothing line. And now they get that opportunity, right? What you're looking for is a hook for your players that doesn't tell them what they're doing, right? The goal, they do have a goal, create a piece of fashion, but I haven't told them how they do with that, what monster they've got to fight to run into. So it will depend. And something like that, because they're each giving, the instruction was they each have to put their own piece of something into it. It gives you a chance if you're in a longer game. So I would say, okay, if I was running this for 2 hours, we might not get to this, but if we're running for 4 hours, they're each going to get a cut scene in the district of their choosing to find their item.
Right. And they'll each get a moment to shine.
Right? To shine.
And then they'll get a group moment where they're gonna have to plan maybe out
put it together.
Then they have to put it together. Yes, right. So they have to plan how they're gonna put it together. So then they all go their separate ways, but then they come back, and I assume that they have to put it together and actually make it work.
They have to put it together. So if I was planning this, it might actually be 5 small encounters if I was doing because they would each get a 5 minor social encounters that count as one big social interaction for getting their items, right? So sometimes you have to pie, right? You have to take the one big thing and kind of slice it up and say, okay, if I'm at 4 hours, but if we're only at 2, I might give them some instruction, right? So, or I might feed them something that says, I mean, that's actually so one of the things that I always write in, this is important in any setting, and this is already written into the Galleria in general.
Mm.
You need to have something there in case your players hit a wall. If they're like, and you can feel that they don't know what to do, how do you feed them the next piece of
Right.
kindling to the fire? How do you keep the fire going, right? So I find that NPCs are a great use for this. Random NPCs too. I mean, you don't have to have a plan. The old lady drops her purse and it's made of a fabulous dragon leather. That is what, and then one of the players goes, "Where did you get that?" And then she tells you, and now they're back on track to go find something, right? So it can be the smallest things. Um, I mean, hell, it could even be, oh, can I curse on this show?
You just
It
did.
oh,
If you
did. It's
set
too
your
late
mind
now.
to it, you could do anything you want.
I mean, it could be all kinds of things, but the Galleria is set up is that there is always an NPC because the customer service representatives that walk around with the creepy white mask are always lurking. So one of the mechanisms that I use when I play the Galleria is if they're standing around for too long or there's not enough action or they don't know what to do, the customer service rep just steps up and goes, "How can I help you today?" Right? It launches them
And it moves
into
things
oh,
along a little bit
it moves
quicker, a
things
little
along. So
bit
the
faster.
customer
Yeah.
service rep is
Yeah.
there for the GM to use as basically a GM NPC throughout. Now, are they really working with the players? Not really. They're working with the Galleria.
So
Right.
let me ask you
So
this.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah. So for example, the those it is nice to have what I call a story NPC, something that can keep put people back on the path if they need it.
What's interesting too is that I would imagine, and I don't know if you've done this, but I can guess that you probably have, with your 12 or with your 10 districts, you will, and with having run it multiple times in quite a few districts, you probably have built up, at least even in just your head, like quite a few NPCs to drop in from other parts that have kind of specific
Yeah.
characters to them or flavors, and they
Yep.
do specific things and links and whatnot. So in a way, it's like a web work of, and again, it's world building
Yeah.
through just running the game over and over and over again
And
from
honestly,
different
some of those
angles.
NPCs don't stick, right? Like I run them once, I'm like,
Right.
cool, that was an NPC, done, right? I've had some NPCs that I do keep. Like there's an NPC in the entertainment district. She runs an entertainment house called the Big Black Cat, and she is very much a big black cat folk, right? Like, and she's this big black cat folk with a sassy attitude, and she has stuck because that location was just like a personal favorite of everybody's. There is this is a personal thing, right? I like to put personal things and stuff. So one of my favorite antique stores when I was going to undergrad in Savannah was called the Junkman's Daughter, and one of the first set of dice I ever bought were from the Junkman's Daughter, and they were made of real bone. They were a set of D6s made of real bone that he had gotten from uh uh where did he get them from? New Orleans. He had pulled them from New Orleans, and he was just selling them in his shop. And I bought the set of and I used to go into the Junkman's Daughter all the time for all of my art projects. If I needed something weird or
Mm.
like I needed license plates one time, like 20 of them, and he had like hundreds in the back. Like I loved this man. I loved his shop. I tried to give him my patronage when I could. So one of the NPCs, for example, in the antiques district is the Junkman's Daughter.
Mm. Oh, cool.
That is her
Right.
name. She calls herself the Junkman's Daughter. And so the Junkman is probably, the guy who might have started the antiques district or has been here the longest, and she is his lineage and has taken over his business. So she would become the NPC that knows the most about what's actually hidden in the antique district, how long things have been
Right.
here, how long piles have been building, right? Who dumps their junk, those kinds of things. So she's a key NPC. So for each of these districts, I basically have a key NPC.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to eventually have what did I say? A guild, right? The functioning guild for each one. And then I have basically a mini adventure, like a hook that sets you on course to learn more about the
Well,
Galleria.
it's good because it gives each one of these districts a flavor. And
Yep.
that's one of the things that I don't want to say I struggle with it, but I always strive for. Like I'm
Hmm.
always worried, like when I make things up on the fly, sometimes they can have a really strong flavor. Other times they come across as really bland because I can't quite think of it or I can't come up with
Right.
that idea. And what I find that my players are most satisfied by is when they go someplace it's distinct from other places. And I think the idea of you kind of moving around within these 10 districts, having, slowly but surely building up and accumulating a network of NPCs gives each district, if you're working for, if you're making up NPCs, you're making up guilds,
Right.
and a hook for each one, it gives each district a distinct flavor that's like
Yeah, it's just a
crucial
flavor.
or
And so,
key.
if they end up in one, there at least is an NPC. It may not be the core aspect of their adventure. And they may not, like, for example, they may go to the antique district to find a piece of antique something that they want to put on a cuff or a button or a whatever for this piece of. But of course, we have to have the real drama, right?
Hmm.
Because the social search for your item is pretty low. Now, you might have a barbarian who has to fight
Mm.
for his item. So again, you can tailor some of these things.
Would
You might have, a wizard that has to give up a trinket.
would you here's another thing that I've noticed about running
Mhm.
games. Would you build pre-gen characters? I mean, I assume if it's a one shot and you're showing up at basically at a convention, you have to
Mhm.
hand out characters unless
Yes.
they've signed up like a week in advance and the players have had time to sort of make something up. Are you
Yep.
handing out pre-gens and
For this, no. The for this, I had never have. I've always let people use whatever they want. Though the if you're going to start and really use this for a campaign to like launch one, a lower level is better because they technically have a no fighting policy, right? Which means you're not supposed to have combat,
oh
but
right. Oh,
they're right
interesting.
because it's a shopping. Nobody's going to let you just break out in a fight in the middle of
Right.
a mall,
Security.
right? So then you had this like, yeah. So now you're dealing with security. What happens if you get arrested? What do you learn when you go to the dungeons and the jail? Wonder who they sacrifice to become customer service,
Oh, right.
right? So you're
Yeah.
told that customer service chooses this path.
But
But
interesting.
so the stakes, the more you're here, you're like, oh, wait a second, this isn't a happy shopping district, right? It's like slowly peeling back the scary skin of Sesame Street. Because you're like, I'm here to return this box of squirrels I got for Christmas for my grandma for no reason, right? And then like you show up and you're like, wait a second, who's this creepy guy with the gold molten mask to his skin? Wait a second. What's going on here? They just took that guy away for fighting. Is he going to come back? What do you mean I can't find the door to get out? Right. And it becomes worse and worse. What do you mean I'm now kind of attracted to gold and I might have a sickness where I start growing scales? What do you mean? Right. And that's the idea. The longer you play it, the more you go, what do you mean? What do you mean? How I got to get the hell out of here. And the stakes
Right.
just get higher and higher and higher. So it doesn't come about shopping anymore. It becomes about solving the mystery to get out of the Galleria.
So then with this in mind then, we have, I'm assuming around 4 to 5 players that are
Four to five
standing in
players.
line. They all get chosen in the lottery to build this piece of fashion, this item.
Yep.
And they're charged with like finding the elements to sort of
Yeah.
the
Their
pieces to put
choice
it
of
all
what they
together.
build. Uh huh.
How how is this now you've shown us the triangle there, but can you tell us a little bit about how you're going to structure
Yep.
this now? I
So we
mean, would
just
that
got
be the
our
next?
social, right? So our dot, well, we said our three dots were an intellectual, a social, and a combat. So we've got our social. They're going to have to go around asking for the pieces that they need. They've got to find them. They've got to buy them. They've got to barter them. They've got to fight for them. Whatever that is, they got to get the stuff. Now let's talk about the intellectual piece. The intellectual encounters are often the hardest because unless you're just doing a flat dungeon puzzle, these have to be fed like you're feeding Sherlock Holmes. Okay,
This is
this
a
is
tough
why
one for me.
GMs shy away from these, right?
Yes.
We shy away from the intellectual puzzle, but they tend to be the most satisfying for your players because that moment your player goes, I figured it out, or oh shit, when I saw that symbol doing the blah blah, right? So the slow feed often has the best payoff, but they are the hardest to build. So, first off, we've got to actually have an intellectual thing for them to bite onto, which is not just that their piece and garment is going to be shown off, that it's going to be modeled by the daughter of the head of the fashion guild. She's basically Princess Tier, okay? And just because I love this kind of thing, more than likely she's a full on Valley girl because mall setting.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't she be, right? And
Brody
now
to
that you
the
have this NPC,
max.
Right, exactly. She's like, "Oh my god, okay." Right? And so, you have this, like, total character that either a player is gonna hate,
Right.
right? Your PC is gonna hate or they're gonna love. And this also becomes now an opportunity. Here's our NPC, the princess of the fashion district, we'll call her because I don't have a good name for her right now. Um, she is gonna be our intellectual puzzle. So the question is, what about her is mysterious? What about her involvement in this becomes mysterious? Well, maybe it has something to do with her dad who keeps her behind closed doors. Or maybe it has to do with the fact that she only gets to come out once a year for the fashion show. What is the mystery about this fashion show? What is it about her and this festival?
So she's the one that's going to be modeling this piece that
Right.
the five players come up with. Um, when you say those questions, I immediately start thinking things like Man in the Iron Mask style kind of like mystery. I don't know what this means, but I start thinking like
Right.
she's trapped somehow, or maybe that's
Right.
not the real her. Maybe it's some sort of
This and
avatar of her, or
this is the intellectual encounter. From the start, your player should be going, why are they keeping her behind closed doors? Isn't it weird that she doesn't go anywhere without four pieces of security? So your intellectual puzzle doesn't usually look like a pinpoint in the storyline. It looks like an ongoing series of questions that your players engage in. And this is when they start making intellect checks, history checks, wisdom checks, insight checks. The other set of checks that get missed when you're doing combat
right.
and social, right? Because that's all charisma. So now you've hit another set of skills because remember, your table is diverse. Your characters are diverse. Everybody needs their moment. So if you're not going to get 4 hours where they each get their side thing, we still have to give everybody the chance. So maybe your rogue picks up on something that everybody else doesn't. Because the fact of the matter is, this is the princess about to be crowned and wearing in the middle of all of these people a probably very valuable, unique, one of a kind, totally avant garde made piece of outfit that you're going to make her. And she's a valuable item because she is the princess of the fashion district. This is 101 kidnapping situation. This is 101 princess goes disappearing. So what
Oh,
so the real plot here is, oh yay, we get to make a piece of fashion and we're going to get honored at the end for the big fashion. No. There's a plot against the princess. So the intellectual puzzle they're trying to figure out is, can they figure out that the princess is going to be kidnapped and who's doing it?
let me ask you this. You don't have to be honest. You can say
Oh
something
gosh.
sensational
Oh,
for the
fantastic. Okay.
for the purposes of making an exciting stream. This is just coming to you right now,
Yeah,
or is
this
this
is me
sort of
talking out loud. Like this is how I plan
that's
things.
great.
Yeah, this is how I plan stuff. So I'd be like, oh, okay, here's a princess. Well, again, I don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? The structure of the princess being kidnapped is something we know. It's
Right.
core to fantasy.
It's
It's
a
core, right?
it's
And I can
classic.
recycle that in an interesting way. Now I'm hiding the truth of it underneath this great fashion show, and you thinking this is all about your fashion outfit. But the fact of the matter is, it's actually about the princess. So that's the intellectual puzzle, right? So there's
Right.
there's my third bit of my
And at
triangle.
some
Now I'm
point going through the first, which was or I mean, I say the first only in the order that we are approaching these, right?
so
But it
far we've
may
laid it
be the
out, sure.
third for the players, right? The first one, of course, is the social aspect when they're as they're moving from place to place. Another corner of that triangle is the intellectual, and the final is the combat. And so, depending on which one, these are this is your triangle, and depending on which one the players sort of scoot towards first, that may color and shape
Right.
the way that the other ones play out.
Exactly.
Okay,
And a note, I've not made any notes here on exactly how those moments play out. I don't
that's
know how
interesting.
and what they're
Yeah,
going to find.
yeah.
I don't know. The only thing I know is that there is somebody plotting to kidnap the princess, but I don't know how that's going to turn out. Will they successfully kidnap her? I don't know. But they have a plot, and that plot is very simple. They have built a trap door in the stage. When she takes the stage at the end wearing your garment, that trap door will fall out and they will kidnap her in front of everybody. So now you're also talking about a plot that maybe is meant to embarrass someone. This is very public. Now, I don't have all the answers to these. What if my players come across somebody and I make up a greedy NPC on the spot and they are assured that is the antagonist? I'll just make them the bad guy. I'll be like, oh, yeah, definitely. He's definitely an antagonist. He doesn't like the fashion district because they take all of the money from the jewelry district. Simple, right?
This
That's simple.
this is interesting because you know what's funny? So every year at my prior school, we used to take a field trip. Well, we used to go on essentially a class trip, right? And so my
Hmm.
class trip was I took my kids to Washington D.C. And one of the things that we did in D.C. was and I'm embarrassed now, and I'm sure it's probably more famous than I ever knew, but we used to watch this play where each version of it was a play that was put on for young people like middle
Okay.
school and elementary school, right? And so they would run through this mystery. There's like a murder mystery, and what they would do is between each act they would come off the stage and they would talk to the kids, and the kids they'd say, well, who do you think did it? And they'd give
Uh
clues
huh.
and talk about it, and they'd be listening to what the kids said. And what I found out was, and what they revealed at the end is they revealed who the killer is, and then they came out and they said, by the way, this play doesn't actually have an ending. What we do each time we perform it is we talk to you, the audience,
Yeah.
and we try to figure out who you think did it, and then we make it work
And
based
we
on
make
who
that
you
happen.
think.
That is exactly your job as a GM. It is to set up this triangular structure of 3 points contact with the storyline and then let your players make choices. And you need to be listening. That is the number one skill of a GM is to listen. So notice that I'm not plotting this, like I said, A, B,
Yeah.
and C. Here's what happens. Here's a cave. Here's a map. Here's a magic item. So instead, they're going out to find items. They're probably going to find some magic items, but they're going to tell me what kind of magic item they want. Do they want a brooch for the vest they're making? Do they want a skirt? Do they want to, right? So I just go to this book right here called Vault of Magic and I just search up what they want. Note, I'm not planning what they want because I've got 900 magic items in this book to choose
Mm.
from when they pick one or if they pick one. Because why would I spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes skimming through this book by trying to pick something knowing they may not pick that? Or they go to the antique district and they're like, I don't know, I just want to do a general search. Table,
Right.
right? That is planning I don't have to do. What I do need to plan though is the last phase of this triangle, which are the
Hmm.
people kidnapping the princess. They are our combat encounter.
Okay, I was going to say, is this going to become the combat encounter? Okay,
This
all
is the
right.
combat encounter, right? So, what piece are we missing? The only planning that I actually really have to do for this one shot, other than what the previous stuff I've done for the Galleria setting in general,
Hmm?
is decide on my key NPC, the 2 points that we already talked about, and plan their heist. My job as the GM is to plan the heist. It's
Right,
to
because
plan getting the princess.
mm,
That's
okay.
that's that's my game. That's the fun part for me. I go, okay, what am I actually planning here? I can plan an NPC and I can plan the basic festival setup and all of the fun things to get them started, but I can't plan what they're going to choose, what they're going to build, who they're going to talk to along the way. But I know that somebody's plotting. So I just set up the basics, which is there's probably a rival district. Maybe I choose, maybe I can choose an advance or not. Maybe I can come up with a good reason why it might be, like I said, the jewelry district or the merchant district, I think is what it's called, which is where the banks and stuff are. Money's always at the core of everything, everybody. And there is some rival between the princess's father, right, the fashion district, and the lead of the fashion district, and this other guy. The fact of the matter is, he wants to embarrass and get his money back, and the best way to do that is to hold the princess hostage, right? So let's embarrass him publicly. Let's make his whole festival a total fail. Steal his daughter while we're at it, and this really rare magic guard piece that has meaning to the people of the fashion district. Because again, we're not talking about just like the wing of a mall, we're talking about a city. Thousands of people living in this one district of this Galleria for size. So it's important to these people who have chosen this city specifically to them.
So
So
then,
I just have, yeah, so then I need to plan the heist, which is
yeah.
there's the head guy, but he's not going to do the heist. He's going to sit up in his bank somewhere and send goons to go do it.
Now, let me ask this though. when you say the heist, are you talking about the moment where the trap door opens and she falls through? So here's what I'm guessing, and please
Hmm.
again correct me if I'm wrong, or correct me if your technique is not to maybe necessarily go
Yeah,
this
yeah,
way.
sure, sure, sure.
So what I'm starting to see here then is the first half to two-thirds of the game is going to be maybe assembling these pieces, challenges that are social and intellectual. Um, and
And the
then,
reason I don't throw combat at them at first is because social and intellectual role play and dice rolls build teamwork.
mm,
Combat usually does not, because that's the time I get to shine. So I save combat for the end because what you're doing is you're actually building teamwork. So when we make it to combat, you're working together.
so then that's what the climax, if we were to
The
say there's
climax is the
a
princess,
climax, is
right?
the
So again, when I plan this combat encounter, they could figure out who these guys are before the trap door opens up. Because
right.
right, so I have to plan the heist. So that is my actual job with this one shot, is to plan the heist of kidnapping the princess. So big guru in the bank, we'll call him Mr. Moneybags. Okay, Mr. Moneybags has hired a team of 4 goons to plot this kidnapping, this public kidnapping. They're going to need to set it all up, which means for the last few days, they have posed as the stage maintenance crew to set it up. Okay. So maybe they find uniforms where they're not supposed to, or maybe they find weird building equipment that doesn't belong in some way, part of the intellectual questioning, right? More than likely, they're going to be, these 4 goons are going to be in the crowd posing at the announcement ceremony, hoping that their names get pulled
Oh, and
because they
they
want to get
get
close to her.
angry when they don't, something happens. And okay, okay, whoa, I love this connection
So
because
see, immediately, even at the beginning, their names could be pulled, and somebody could roll to incite some guy who gets angry in the crowd and roll a nat 20 on it, which means combat could ensue immediately. So again, my triangle could spin. We could do combat first and get into combat, and this guy tries to run for it, and so do the rest of his other 4 goons. Now you're on a chase to find the 4 guys across the Galleria and get your item and make it back, right? It doesn't matter what order things play out. They build a structure that is revolving no matter which point they hit, and it
this
feeds into the next one.
this feels a lot like to me. So a lot of times people will say they have a sandbox for a setting, right? And you walk around a town and all kinds of different things happen. And this is something I've often kind of thought about. I feel a little bit like the triangle that you're creating here is really just a sandbox.
Yeah,
It's
it's a tiny
something
one.
for the players to bump around in for a
Mm-hmm.
few hours, and you know in the back of your head, you know who's at each spot, you know what their backgrounds are, maybe you know what they're plotting or what they're planning or what their problems are,
Their goals are,
their
yeah.
goals. So when the players bump into them, you have an idea of how to react as those NPCs or as that setting itself. So like if for example the NPCs are plotting something and then our PCs stumble upon them while they're plotting, you know that they're plotting. You know that
Right,
probably the stakes for them are, my goodness, we don't want to be found out, so maybe we're going to try and get these guys
right.
or whatever. So you can kind of guess what's going to happen, and it follows. It stands to reason that a lot of times, I feel like the advantage that a game master has is that we as GMs have plotted and planned for hours,
Mm-hmm.
whereas, and this is not meant as a slight against players because the better they are, the better it works, but players have to react in a moment. And I feel like a lot of times when I react in a moment, I go the cliched tropic kind of way. It's very predictable in some ways. Like not always. So,
Right,
sometimes
sure.
and the brain power when you have like 5 players together, one of them just goes, "Wait a minute, why don't we do this?" And it's suddenly much more
Right, and
interesting.
that's the thing. I always assume my players are smarter than me. So why would I try to
That's a
plan the
good,
choices they're going to make?
yeah, me
My
too.
players are smarter than me,
Yeah,
right? So I'm not going to
right.
assume that they can't, one of them can't go, I want to roll an insight on that creepy guy lurking in the corner. because they could come out with a 22 insight and I have to go, oh yeah, he's
Right.
plotting something.
Then
He's
you
real
have to
mad.
reveal it.
His name didn't get pulled.
So you don't
Now,
you
yeah.
don't fudge it a little bit. You don't say like, well, I don't really want to reveal that right now.
I don't build them that way where I can't reveal that, right?
Okay.
So, for example, even though they might pick that guy out, they don't necessarily, even with the 22, they can't know what's on his mind
Right.
unless they throw
Right.
some magic at
That's
him,
a good
right?
point.
So they
Yeah.
know that he's up to something, that he's really upset his name didn't get drawn. So more than likely, I'm going to guess what my players are going to do are corner him and question him, right? So if they're going to corner and question him, he may not come through. He may try to run. His other friends may try to rescue him. Does he have an out? Does he have an alibi? Can he lie better than the rest of them? So what I would do now, so let's say I've got my structure, I've got my 3 points. Here they are. Okay. Now I'm going to go back. My last phase of planning is always to name things. Now I have to name the princess. I have to name the festival. I have to name the guy who's plotting the kidnapping.
Not Mr. Moneybags, I take it.
Not Mr. Moneybags. We can call him
Good placeholder.
Mr. Gold Pockets. Like I don't know. We'll
Gold
figure out something.
pockets.
Pockets. Yeah, that's basically the vibe I'm getting. And honestly, this setup, and I want to. In 30 seconds, I'm going to reskin this for you for a same one shot new campaign or
Oh.
new one shot. Same one shot, new one shot. Let's say I was doing a table with all women for this fashion one. I would make the goons the other models who are jealous. Now it's harder to figure out the truth of the
Oh.
matter because they're supposed to be there.
Right. Right.
Right? If I wanted to make it something that was like maybe we were playing it because we talk a lot about themes. So what if my players come to the table in this kind of running theme with my PCs that they've created, or this kind of idea that they all come from a level of poverty,
Mm-hmm.
or this kind of working class background. Maybe it's actually the workers union who plans this against the princess because they want a pay raise for building the stages and running the lights and doing that, right? Same story, minor change, new group of people,
Right. And
right?
it will add a different flavor, an entirely different flavor to the game, and also something that like you as a GM can riff off of, and the
Right.
players can sort of start intuiting and filling
Right.
in a lot of those blanks that
Because
maybe
here's
you
the
hadn't
thing,
thought of.
I think sometimes when we go, well, this is the bad guy. Well, are the models really bad? They're just jealous. This is a jawbreaker situation, right? They're kidnapping Queen
Mhm.
Bee, right? Or the labor union. This is when things get tricky, right? When we start playing on empathy. These PCs might actually side with the labor union and the rights of these people, which means
Oh,
when
wow.
they figure out there's a kidnapping, maybe they don't save her. Maybe they help to ensure that these people get the pay they deserve because the real bad guy is consumerism and greed, which is her father not paying people,
So
right?
this brings up an interesting question for me. Okay, so I think you're right. Like the players often do, and that's the standard joke. You never know what the players are really going to do, right? And that's pretty much the truth. But I feel like sometimes they do such a reversal sometimes that I feel like they take the wind out of, say, my story. And I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, right? Because nobody, this is all collaborative. We're making this up and we're
Yeah.
keeping information from each other for the fun part of it, right? Part of it is when the GM is like, merciful Lord in heaven above, they've just revealed my entire plot and I now have nothing left or whatever. So if halfway through you realize that your PCs are switching sides and they're actually going to help, like they're like, oh my goodness, this princess is corrupt, or maybe
Or her
they,
father is
or her
corrupt,
father
right?
is corrupt, and these people are fighting for something. Mr.
Important.
Goldpockets is fighting for something important and nice, but maybe how do you keep the momentum going in that instance? Because
So now we just shift because I've already created 4 goon NPCs, which in this case would be part of the people that built the stage, running the lights, the soundboard, right? They're just right. So I just reskinned them. Same goons because I'm gonna build I could build them all to be catfolk, or I could build them all to be dwarves, or I could build 4 different ones. It doesn't matter. They could still be part of the labor unit. They could be
Mm,
the models. They could be the
mm.
goons, right? Just building 4 basic character sheets, which is the last phase of my planning, by the way, is to make sure that I have what I need for those characters. If they're really going to get in combat, I need to make sure I have a combat sheet for them. But so I have all this planned, so it doesn't really matter. And if they switch sides to say, go and kidnap the princess, well, to get the princess on stage to finish the kidnapping, they still got to make the garment.
Right.
That
So
piece
they have
of
to keep up the pretense of
they
being.
still have to keep up the pretense or the heist doesn't work. So now they're sworn to secrecy, probably with a knife to their throat that they're not going to tell anybody. So the stakes are actually, by their switch, the stakes actually heighten for them.
Yeah, because they're
Because
kind
what
of
if they
like
screw up?
double agents now at this point. Like, and actually, the thing that this makes me think of is now maybe there might be a situation where the actual security gets a little suspicious and says, "Well, wait a minute. I thought I saw you talking with so and so, and we thought that Mr.
Right.
Gold
So
Pockets
now
was not. Why
now
are
eyes
you
on them.
talking to them?"
Plus, anybody that gets brought into a heist late in the game should always have the concern that they're going to be the fall guy.
Chelsea, have you had experience being the fall guy in a real
I'm
life
just
heist?
saying.
As your lawyer, I
So
advise you not to reveal the truth in that, but that seemed a
but
little
right,
bit
that's
close to home.
right, but that's the truth. So
Yeah.
now I go, okay, so to answer your question, when my players pull the wind or they shift things, I don't like to say pulling the wind because really
Yeah,
they're
you're
still
right.
making a choice,
You're right.
right? So when they up the stakes by flipping it on its head and joining the party
Yeah,
kidnapping the princess, I just up the stakes even more. Now you're the fall guy.
right.
So how do you keep upping the stakes? Because they may have figured out your plot, but just because they know the plot doesn't mean they've fixed it, they've solved it. And now sometimes information is dangerous because you know it, you're a target, right? It's the same reason why superheroes don't let you know who they're dating.
Right.
Now I
Yes.
can go after your mom.
Yeah.
Now I can. Now I can. You know what? You get killed today. You are a liability, right? So any choice they make can still be played upon. It still has, as long as that choice can lead to another choice, there's nothing stopping it, right? And so now we're going to do it. We're going to play through the festival. You got the garment, you're going to kidnap her, trap door opens up, you got the princess in your in your hold
Yep.
or whatever.
Yep.
You've taken her through the tunnel that you dug underneath to the other district that you're using an old catacomb blah blah for. Now what? You've kidnapped a princess.
Yeah, because that would set up. I mean, the truth is, that would set off every alarm in the entire mountain, in the entire district. Like,
Yeah, the princess
because
goes missing
I don't
publicly.
think, yeah, you could. I mean, because that's almost kind of suicidal in a way. But
Yeah.
it does make sense because, and it's interesting too. What I find interesting about your technique here with the triangle is you're upping the stakes. You're allowing the players almost in a way themselves to up the stakes and twist and turn the plot so that they get kind of deeper and deeper and deeper into it with each.
Yes, and that's the goal. The web has to get spun deeper and deeper, but that's not actually totally my job,
Mm,
right? I can spin that web deep and thick around the choices they make. So if I'm building off this triangle, it's just all I'm doing. You know how you make a dream catcher?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is what you do with this triangle. Instead of point, 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 this is not how you navigate the triangle. Across is how you navigate from the, and then you go back to another point, right? Because you might learn a new piece of the intellect encounter that leads to going to get a new item for the garment that you need to complete the heist to kidnap the princess, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter which order you do it in, really, whether you choose to one side or the other. Hell, they could say, no, we're not kidnapping the princess. We are going to help negotiate terms to get you paid. And
Right.
what if the guys doing the heist don't like that? And then they attack them. Now you have a combat encounter.
Mm.
Right, or they don't want to be ousted, or they want to wait to kidnap the princess, and so they have leverage to get paid, right? So there's also conflict there. There are a lot of ways you can spin it. So I think as a GM it's important not to corner yourself where you can't make choices
Right,
when
and
your players make
you get
choices.
kind of painted into a corner sometimes because you're almost too strict and you're not, or at least this has been my experience. You're too strict and you're not bending with the players and maybe listening to them. And so in the end, you end up kind of like painting yourself into a tighter and tighter corner.
Yep.
S-
And a lot of that happens when we plan linearly. Because what happens is sometimes my players jump and find something out at the end, like the big goal of the bad guy. Well, now everything in the middle is obsolete because this is linear. I can't jump across a triangle. I can't rotate it. I can't, right? Because it's a linear path. So, my biggest encouragement as you design one shots of your campaigns is avoid a lot of linearness. Now, if you think that I planned 80 episodes of Coriolis knowing what was going to happen at the end without some linearness, but when we plan campaigns, I do those differently. I do what are called beats, right? Which is actually how actors learn scenes, or what we call beats. And beats are major shifts in strategy, tactic of the story of what's being told, right? So a beat may be 2 pages of script before you get to a new beat. So a beat is really like a big encompassing, which could be 4 or 5 sessions for a beat to happen.
I feel like what's interesting though is I think you can say the 3 points of your triangle in a weird way are a beat too.
Are the
It's just that
beats. They're
maybe
the tiny beats.
you don't necessarily have the flavor to them because you're waiting for the players to encounter them and make the flavor happen, you know. And
Happen.
what's interesting is when you mention beats, you would also, I'm going to tie this back to what you said about how you don't have to talk about what you don't have to know what the players are going to do. You just have to know what's going on in the background. And so I would argue that the beats that you're talking about, and I don't know, are those moments when when you're making up a bigger campaign and you're playing it out, are you talking about big actions that are happening in the background that are going to shift the tone and structure of the game
Yeah.
somehow? Mm,
Or so for example, like how we planned, like I know the thing I could plan for this was the heist. The beats of the heist are simple. Get your team, right? Gold Pockets needed his team.
right. Yes.
He had to infiltrate the build crew.
Yeah.
Beat number 2. Now these beats happened without the party even here.
Right.
And that's important. Things happen in the world that your players will not come in contact with. So, right? And then the beat of being near the stage, plotting the trap door, whatever, 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 and then the kidnapping of the princess for the actual leverage.
Mm,
Those are his beats of the plot that he's doing. So now what I'm going to say is yes, there are very important beats to our story, but in a campaign I'm going to plot it very similarly. So if I have the big event, the cataclysmic story altering path may not come in until episode 5 or 6. But here's the thing, let's say that it's a bunch of cultists who are going to raise a bunch of spirits from the dead to come and like possess every firstborn male. Okay. I'm just making this shit up off the top of my head. Okay, there we go.
sure you are. I'm going to write
Yeah,
this
yeah,
down
right.
and now I'm going to.
Firstborn male.
Hmm.
Right. So that is his plot. And maybe your players find it out or they don't give a rat's behind about the cultists. They spend 5 days in a town shopping. Okay. Happens. That does not stop that cultist from doing exactly what he planned to
Right.
do, which means they might have spent 5 days shopping, but at the end of 5 days, guess what he's doing? Releasing those spirits to go kill the firstborn son.
I think what I find in common with a lot of game masters who are as good as people like Chelsea are, um, they're often thinking about the actions that are taking place in the background. And I feel like I want to sort of point out that like what's interesting to me about this is that I feel like Chelsea is in and good game masters are sort of planning what's going on in the background. And what happens is it allows them to bump around within this universe to allow the players to move around within this universe and this setting, and it allows them to sort of build a reaction to that. So like she's describing, if the bad guys are doing a certain thing, creating a certain weapon, or they're kidnapping a princess, or they're
Right.
whatever, and someone like the players get a whiff of it or bump into it, what she's done is, and what it sounds like you've done, is you've given yourself motivations for the bad guys or for the antagonists. We'll call them that because they aren't necessarily bad.
Sure.
They may be
Yeah, the
doing something.
antagonist, right? They
The
cause
antagonists.
conflict.
So they're causing a conflict, and then the players have to go in there and they're going to determine whether or not it's one of those 3 parts of the triangle. They're going to tell you whether it's combat, whether it's social or intellectual. And it's also going to be, I believe here, I'm okay saying this, it's going to be based on maybe something she's plotted for that encounter anyway.
Yep.
So I think this is a really smart way to kind of do it. It's like a dramatic sandbox rather than having
Yes.
like a literal, not a literal, a literal
Let's think.
abstract
Yes. Let's
figurative
think about some of
sandbox.
our favorite shows. Let's just think about a TV show we really love, or that was okay. You know, I'm going to use Game of Thrones because I think it is like a dramatic example that fits this really well. There was a lot of that show, and not all of it was great, but we remember the beats.
Yeah.
We remember the Red Wedding. We remember Ned Stark's death,
Wait, Ned
right?
Stark
The
died? I haven't gotten to that. What?
right,
What?
right, right. So we remember the beats, right? We remember them storming the wall. We remember the beats, but there's a lot that happens leading up to those beats that make those beats impactful. Think how long we built up to the White Walkers attacking the wall.
Yeah.
Seasons.
Yes. That's what's so interesting. I was actually just rereading it. You know what's funny? Like I was rereading the original book, which I'd like to say I read it when it like came out in hardcover, ladies and gentlemen. So I was into Game of Thrones before it was big. I was reading Night Flyers by George R. R. Martin. But at any rate, that's how much I was into George R. R. Martin. But anyway, I remember reading the first little prologue, and I don't remember how it happens in the TV show, but I read the prologue and a White Walker comes at them, and I didn't even quite understand what it was. And
Was,
I was
yeah.
expecting, like, I knew it was something fantastical, like in the fantasy realm, but then suddenly they're gone, and they don't even talk about them. I mean, except for some
Nope.
hints for
Think about it.
like
It's a seed. That's all it
thousands of
is. It's just a
pages,
seed.
and I
Yep.
forgot that there was any magic or supernatural in Game of Thrones anyway. And like you were saying, it's those little bits of connective tissue in between every
Yep.
so often popping up, and they're building this kind of like impending sense of
Of
doom
doom.
or
Of
something
doom. Yep.
coming.
Yep. Or drama. Yeah. And that's kind of your goal. Whether you're doing it on a one-shot scale, which is real small. Now watch, I'll take the exact formula we just did for this one shot and turn it into a campaign this fast. So now for a one shot, I needed them to connect, right?
Yeah.
So I did that by selecting them via the lottery and getting them to each choose something to make
Mm,
this thing out of. What if instead, if we're going to go the campaign route and we've chosen the fashion district, in the Galleria in various districts, there are hidden different pieces of a piece of armor outfit. It's rumored that all the pieces of this beautiful piece of armor are hidden or lost, we'll say, in the Galleria in various places. So now instead of each choosing what they add to it, they each have to go get. They have to do these minor um task to go get, whether it's maybe one of them is fighting in a battle arena, and this is where I can hit each character, right? My alchemist has to go to the alchemy district and make something to get the thing, or the antique district, right? So they each get their moment, just like we talked about in
mm,
like a 4-hour game, but in a bigger way,
mm.
right? A minor storyline web that gets them tied in, and then the armor is going to be what's worn by the princess or the prince that's going to get kidnapping. But now the kidnapping, we can actually watch those 5 beats, right? That gold pockets had to do,
Mm.
setting up the stage, infiltrating thing, that can actually become part of a larger campaign. So all I did was I took the things that we skipped because there's not time for that, and I said, what if they did see it? What if they do find 4 guys in like janitor uniforms that aren't supposed to be on shift right now? What if they do find the tunnel that's being dug under the stage? What if they do, right? And so all I did was just pull it, same major beats.
Yeah.
Now the points of my triangle that were encounters are beats.
It's really interesting because you're taking those five mini quests, which are,
Yep.
I assume, tailored to the pre-gens that you've made, right? So depending on what
Yep.
their shtick is, or their then it's
Mm-hmm.
going to follow along with what their interests are, and those are going to be the little pieces which they put together to assemble this piece of fashion, whatever it happens to come out as. But layered within that, there's going to be this other layer which has potential to go deeper or further
Deeper.
along within the
Yep.
campaign should this one shot turn into something where everybody's really happy
Something
and
bigger.
excited, and they're like, you know
Yep.
what, we want to run something.
Now,
Let's do something
the
next
other
week.
key to a one shot, and I said this at the beginning, the most important thing is why they're all there together. How do they meet, right? We said that. The most important thing for the ending is the cliffhanger on a one shot. Okay? It's always a nice feeling to be like, we did it, we saved the
Right.
princess. But what if the end of this one shot is actually you getting away with the princess and we don't get to see how it pans out? You did it, you kidnapped her. So I also try to set up my one shots where if things run over or I hit time too early, can I have a really great like thing?
Hmm.
Maybe we really do get to the end and she does get kidnapped and they run away with her and that's where our one shot ends because it sets up now for you to what the next time? Go rescue the princess, right? Or to make the negotiation. Heck, you could even end with a riot if you wanted to. A riot breaks out and you go chasing the like there's a lot of different ways you could kind of end without wrapping it up entirely. A perfect present is so boring. But a Christmas present wrapped in the comics, the Sunday comics with like a
Oh, I like
handmade bow,
this. Yeah.
right? It's not pretty, it's not perfectly wrapped, but it's way more interesting because you go, but
So you would give them, what's interesting is that you're giving them kind of like, you're giving them a climax and a final moment to sort of accomplish the relatively smaller thing
right to
in the
finish the
face of
encounters.
in the face of the bigger kind of teaser reveal at the end, which gives them the satisfaction of having accomplished what they came for, but also the desire to carry on, like once they maybe end up running off with the princess. The princess says,
Right.
maybe the princess says, "Don't take me
Hide
back."
me. Right. Don't take me back. I hate my father. Or better yet, what if the real twist at the end is her father paid for the kidnapping
Oh my
because he wants all the money?
gosh.
Right. And you end
Yeah.
it where you're like, what? Right. I think that's great. Or we end on the fact that the princess is like, don't take me back. You have to hide me. And so
Or
we end,
she
you
paid to
know,
have herself kidnapped, like
so that she can
excess
take daddy's
baggage or whatever.
money.
Right, something like that, and there's something else
So
going.
so see
Oh.
this one shot really leaves you right. So if I were to publish this one shot, I'm not going to tell you how to end it. What I might do is very similar to the top of like how conflict starts, like the 3 bullet points of like here's how you rope them in. You could do a lottery. You could have them go search for the pieces of an armor. Right. The hooks I could write you through. I usually write 3 or 4 different ways you could hook a group. I might write 3 or 4 different ways you end this. Need a good cliffhanger? Bullet point. Dad paid for the kidnapping. Oh, want to up the stakes? She paid for the kidnapping to get to daddy's money and he cut her off from it.
Mm.
That's the piece they didn't figure out about the intellectual puzzle. Daddy cut her off.
You know what's interesting? You know what you could do too when you mention this? You could do something where you could give three different possible endings for a GM to run with, or their own,
Yeah,
with it, whatever they make
right.
up. But then if you included three more, they're more like they become the massive triangle of some other story where you can hop
That
between the different stories and they all sort of
right.
tie in at a certain
Right. The
point.
princess says, and maybe she's at the end like, hide me. The love of my life lives in the food court district.
Right.
Right. And so now they're taking her the next time to go meet. So this one shot is open enough that it could be nice and boxed and closed and wrapped in our Sunday comics with some kind of cliffhanger. Dad paid for it. She paid for it. Right. She doesn't want to go back, whatever that cliffhanger we set is. Or you can use the same cliffhangers to set up for the next session. That makes a great one shot as well, something that could potentially seed because I do it all the time where if I have a private game, my player's like, I don't know if I want to play that. Can we just do a one shot?
Mm.
Anytime I do a flavor, what I call the flavor test, where they want to flavor test something. I did this just with a group a couple months ago with Alien, right? They wanted to taste test Alien and see if they liked it. I still left it so they could bring the characters back and
Right.
on enough of a cliffhanger where they wanted more.
Right. Well, um, Chelsea, I am just blown away. I'm really appreciative I'm always really impressed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm super impressed. I'm always nervous to do these shows because the truth is I've had like 5 or 6 different guests. So far it's a relatively new show. But each time it's very different. And am scared because each GM has a different approach, but I'm always super satisfied at the end because I learn something new and I take a peek into someone else's
Yep.
approach. So
There's not only one way to like build a house, y'all. You can build
I
a house
I
lots of different ways.
absolutely, and I just appreciate you sort of showing me your insights. I'm really happy. Like I knew this would be good. I didn't know it was going to be this good. I really appreciate your time, and I just want to end by asking you, can you do a cool thing where you like tell people where to find you
Oh,
in the I've got all your stuff linked
yes.
to below, but I want to see a professional
Yes.
because I'm a klutz and clumsy guy at doing this thing. But tell us where we can find more of your stuff.
Yeah. So, first of all, I want to thank you for letting me come on. It's always nice to just like stretch muscles that I don't that that I get to stretch by myself, but I don't ever get to do it publicly, right?
Mm,
Like sometimes spilling the beans, pulling back the curtain is really nice, and after having done this for a long time,
yes.
it's nice to say I actually do have a little bit of a process, so I can I can say I do have a process and things that I hit on. So I hope you all found it helpful. I'm not a crunchy mechanics GM. So that was hopefully if that's what you showed up today for that kind of planning. I'm so sorry. That's not what you're going to get from me.
Not
You're going to
me
get
either.
story based planning. So, but I do hope it helps you. I encourage all of you to use the triangle method moving forward as you plan your games. So and your sessions. You can find me. You can find me where Little Red Dots are found online, mostly over at Cobalt Press. I am the new marketing director for Cobalt Press, which I'm very excited about.
Congratulations.
And
That's awesome.
obviously, thank you. If you've been following anything in the tabletop sphere, you know that we have announced kind of a new project, Project Black Flag. So most of my time and energy right now is on that project.
What's
Um,
Project Black? Is there something going on the
so,
internet right now? Has something happened?
in the midst of even now, we announced today, even with the release of the SRD 5.1 into Creative Commons, thank you, Wizards of the Coast, for listening to your community. Cobalt Press is moving forward with a forward and backward compatible new core fantasy tabletop game. But it is forward backward compatible with 5e. So it will be
That's
Cobalt
so
Press's
cool.
version of a fantasy game. Our hope is for you to still be able to use all the books you know and love, both from
I
us
was gonna
and from
say,
other
are
publishers.
you're of course, I don't know if you can say this. I mean, you're gonna be using your world and settings, right? Okay,
Yes.
okay, all
Yes.
right. Just
So our goal is to create a core rule fantasy rule book that I'm trying to think what can I say today? A core fantasy rule book. Yes, Midgard, there it is. That you could say take and then take over to Midgard, take into your own setting, but it is a core fantasy game that is going to allow you to be forward and backward compatible with Project Black Flag and 5e, as well as other stuff. Like if you don't want to use 5e, you can just use Project Black Flag as a new fantasy um, core book if you want. So we'll have a lot of more stuff coming out about that. And I can tell you if you want to keep up with Project Black Flag, every Friday from now until the Kickstarter in a few months, we will be making announcements every Friday with new information. And this Friday is going to be our biggest announcement yet in terms of what you can actually expect for changes, like what we are bringing to the table with the book. It's going to be a very interesting one. Um, so there you go. Project Black Flag is where a lot of my time is right now, but I do sometimes have a personal life. And most of that is spent producing for my podcast network, Pod by Night. So if you like dark stories meant for after hours, most of the time we're playing VTM and World of Darkness right now, but we're going to be doing some expanding, but you can check out Pod by Night's Twitch channel, or you can go find us where podcasts are found under Pod by Night. Um, yeah, and then, because you shouted it out, I'll say my kind of home away from home is Unmade Gaming's channel. That is the group that I play with. That's my home table, if you would. That's where I ran the Coriolis game. That's where I ran the Alien game we were talking about. And you can check out both of those in its completion over on Unmade Gaming's YouTube channel. And right now, I'm taking a break from GMing. I'm getting to play a little bit. And on Thursday nights over there, I'm in a One Ring game. So you can come watch me play my best dwarf. Um, yeah, my best dwarf self. I love her to death. She's such a fun character. But I will say, because I don't think I could talk about this last time because it wasn't announced yet.
uh-huh.
I can talk about it now, but I'm
I'm
not sure if I did
sure
last
you
time.
can.
But I can now. I can
Ah,
now.
okay.
So I can officially this spring. So within the next couple months, the new official Fallout tabletop game is dropping, the new D20, and I am lead world designer on that Fallout book. So if you like the way that I design worlds and you like the Fallout setting, you're in for a treat because um this is one of my most proud projects. So Modifius is putting out a non-mini based like our tabletop game because I think the one they have out right now is like heavily minis focused. This is kind of a fresh book. It is set in the Commonwealth, the winter, the atomic winter before the fourth game. So if you like the Commonwealth setting, if you like the fourth game, this is right before all of that takes place. You'll see some of the can I say this? Yeah, I can say this. You'll see some of the locations you know and love from that setting, and then you'll see a whole bunch of new settlements that are written by yours truly,
That's
including one of the major settlements that is part of the core campaign storyline.
that is awesome. I think when I last saw you, I think you were. I can't remember if you told me after
I
the
feel like I told you.
stream,
I was about to say I told
but
you privately because I couldn't really
right, you
talk about it
couldn't
publicly
say
yet.
it, and then I was like, when I saw it announced and all that, I was like, I
Yeah,
knew that.
she
I knew
did.
that. I'm an
Yeah.
insider now. I roll with the important people.
Yeah, so there it is. So if you like Fallout, I'm really proud of this one, everybody.
That's a
Yeah, I'm really proud of
cool.
this one. So check it out. It's my first major like published world design. So I'm a pretty happy dot
That's
about it. But
so
I have a
awesome.
few other projects, but those are the big things right now. And if you are looking for more dot writing, I am working on a project though it's not public yet called the Vineyard Project. Just like it sounds, the Vineyard Project, and it is a setting based. It's an antagonist and setting based book for any campaign that you want, fantasy
Which
campaign that
makes,
basically is set in like the Underdark.
when you say that, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know what you mean by that exactly, but the first thing I picture is the idea of you sitting down and plotting out all these things going on, and then
Yep.
you just sort of throw the players out there and see how they
It's
react to
just
it.
like what I did the Galleria, right? It's
Right,
very similar. The difference is that it's
the
set in something
approach.
called the Vineyard, which is kind of what the Underdark or like the level under a city, right? And it's run by this kind of corrupt tiefling who trades souls and favors and things like that for valuables and all kinds of stuff. So it's a basically is it's a book for GMs to use to create an Underdark setting with like a new core antagonist, core NPCs in this world that's kind of like a black market. The whole thing is just like kind of corrupt, but you might have to mitigate it. You might have to do this kind of a thing. So it's a cool setting, and I'm doing some writing for that as well as some mechanical writing for that. I'm adding in some new mechanics to put
Cool.
in, even if you're playing D&D. So it adds a little bit to the world. So that's called the Vineyard Project. It's got a stellar team of writers. Gabe James Games is on that. Kiana Shaw is on that. If you follow Is Friday is a one of the top paid start playing games GMs
Hmm.
like on the platform. She is heading up the project through her production company, so it's going to be a pretty. Sarah Madsen is writing on it. So there's a lot of really really great names. It's going to be a pretty cool setting, especially if you like a darker edge. I asked him, I was like, how dark? It's funny. I get pulled onto these dark writing projects. I wonder why. I asked the same thing about Fallout. I was like, I know this is Fallout and Bethesda, but like, how dark can I get? And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, they're like, well, you know what? Write it and we'll tell you to come back if you need to like pull
Yeah, it's
back a little bit. And that's
always
basically,
easy to reel it back in.
yep. And so that's basically what they told me for the Vineyard. They're like, well, she's kind of corrupt and like literally we want you to write a mechanic for like a corruption
Oh,
sickness. And
that
I was
is
like,
cool.
all right. So I went kind of dark and there were a couple places like, we're gonna just we'll pull that one back a little bit, Dot. But we like this. We like this. So I get asked onto a
Oh,
lot of
it's
these dark projects. So
too
there you go. You know,
PG-13.
yeah, I went too far down the. You know what? Well, it's because I had a character I really wanted. I was writing an NPC for it, a core NPC, and I love a good pun. I love a good pun. I give advantage for puns in my game. It's another thing I do. There you go. There's a little one shot. If you really want to shake up your one shots, stop giving advantage for doing cool things and start giving
Give them
advantage
for
for puns.
puns.
And immediately, laughter, energy at the table, everything changes. But I really wanted this character who kind of lived a dual life, who is like a kind of corrupt surgeon who does surgery on themselves and kind of amputates these kind of like dark
This is
sickness things.
dark.
But this same surgeon has a second personality called the arms dealer in the black market. And they literally sell the body parts, the corrupted body parts, to weapons merchants to like take the darkness out of and those kind of things, but they call themselves the arms dealer because they literally deal in
That's,
body parts.
I would say, I mean, that's a pun, of course, but that's also
Isn't it so
very
cool?
cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So they had this little side job where they're kind of this corrupt surgeon, which it's kind of based on partially the character from oh goodness, I'm so off track now. I know
That's all
this is
right.
like my Midwestern goodbye, even though
No
I'm Southern.
problem.
Um, the it's based on the character from oh my gosh, Hellboy. The one that like he's made of sand and you see his face and it's
Yes.
all kind of like sewn together because he
Yes.
was okay. It's based on that character and the character from I believe it is the first Wonder Woman movie.
Oh,
It's either Wonder it's the one set in World War II where
yeah.
she is the
World War
chemist.
One.
World
No,
War
where,
One, and
right?
she's I can't
I'm
remember if it is the
embarrassed.
Captain America movie or if me neither. Now I am too. I know the character though that I'm talking about. She deals in all the chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the chemist that's making all of this biological warfare. Oh, it is no, it is Wonder Woman, I feel like. Anyways, it doesn't
Probably.
matter. The point of the
Hmm.
matter is, she's kind of based off that character who wore the half mask because half of her face was burned from like a chemical burn. So that's kind of the idea is that over time, this surgeon has become more and more corrupt by their own amputating, the own alterations of their body.
That
So they
is
were like, all
dark.
this body augmentation, we're gonna adjust. So they
Reel
tuned
it
me in a
back.
little bit for some of
Yeah.
the body horror that I put into it.
Yeah.
But there is a literal trade mechanism for trading your body parts to get the sickness out of you, where you can like have her chop the arm off and then you get like a mechanical arm or a tentacle or a so that she can replace the limb with something else. But who knows? You might up in the dark market and see your arm for sale.
I like it. I would have just stamped it approved. Do you know what my job was when I used to work at a movie studio, and I thought working at a
Oh,
movie
fun.
studio was really glamorous. It was so glamorous they gave me two stamps. One that said unapproved, another that said approved, and they would put a document on my desk asking if they should put a dog in the next Star Wars movie. Unapproved.
No. Yeah, no,
Should we
unapproved.
put lightsabers? Approved.
Approved.
And that's all I did for years,
Wow.
basically.
Well, I'm glad I've got your stamp of your
Yeah,
metaphorical
that
stamp of
is
approval.
approved. That is approved.
Yeah, so the arms dealer, she's called the surgeon by day and the arms dealer by night. And yes, it does give lending a
I
hand
was
a
going to
whole new
say
meaning.
Magnum Pie. Thank you. I saw that.
You get, sir,
They'll
advantage.
be doomed colonists. They'll be paying an arm and a leg. Oh no, ladies and gentlemen, we're off.
You get advantage.
You get advantage, and you get advantage, and you
You
get advantage. Oh my
Yep.
goodness.
So
Um,
there you go. There's a little sneak preview of some of the stuff I'm working on. So thank you again for letting me come and just chat.
not at all. It was great to have you sprinkle your magic
I was
dust
about to say now I get to go write a one shot for
all
the fashion
over.
district.
Yeah, this
It's
is
all done.
great, and we can say it all started here.
It all started right
Um,
here.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in and watching. If you're thinking about it at this point, you may feel a sensation going through your mind. That sensation is, I want to subscribe. So please think about hitting that subscription button. And if you know anyone with a laptop or a desktop that happens to be on, if you want to navigate over to YouTube and hit the subscribe button on their computer, it would certainly help me out. Maybe you work in a giant office, like one of those big
Go hit
offices
it
you
on
see in the
every
city, and
computer.
just after everyone goes home at 5:30 or 6, just like, peek up out and just go hit
Yeah, go to everybody's
subscribe.
YouTube because you know they've been logging in during
You
work hours and
know,
just go hit the
everybody's been
subscribe
doing
button.
that. I would appreciate it. If you're looking for us too, because we're hard to find, we have less than 500 subscribers. You can find us on multiple social platforms, including but not limited to Discord, Facebook. Oh yeah, YouTube. You'll find us on YouTube, folks, if you didn't know
Oh,
that. You
what?
will find us on
No.
YouTube. And until it burns and is crashes, we will be on Twitter. Though I haven't been tweeting a lot recently because everybody's so angry on it, and I've been kind of staying away from there and trying to keep it
Yeah, it's been a
positive.
very
But
angry space
yeah,
right
it's
now. I'm
so
just trying to
angry.
bring a little joy and uplifting. Lift up the community, everybody. Lift it up.
Doomed Colonist he says, be right back, writing a mass subscription virus now. That's great. You are
Yeah, you let
smart.
us know when that's done.
Doom
I'd like you to
colonists.
run that for me too,
I was
please.
gonna say, just send your email to me. We can work out a deal. But folks, from all of us here
Yes.
tonight at the headquarters, thank you very much for tuning in. I really do recommend you go check out her stuff. Take a look there in the description. Listen to what she's just said. She's a lot of fun to watch. She runs a great game. You can tell that the players are having a great time. And most of all, I think you're going to enjoy it and probably most likely learn something. So thank you all very much for tuning in. I'll see you in another week or two with this show or Role Player with a Thousand Faces or maybe an actual play. And everybody out there, have a great game and please stay safe.